My name is Paul Speed. I am Scott Rogers' cousin. That's my claim to fame. I am famous because I am Ken Scott Rogers, the famous sculptor. This brings back a lot of good memories of high school. That's where I had a little claim to fame too. I played football and I was pretty good at football, but hey, it's all about life, the long haul. And this guy right here is one of my favorite people in life. He's my cousin. If you can get this genealogy, his mother, my dad, is their brother and sister. And so, again, that's how I'm famous. We are related also to Grant Speed, who is my uncle, who is my dad's brother, his mother's brother. Grant Speed is a famous sculptor, and he did quite a bit of Western art, won quite a bit of awards, and he was an inspiration to his nephew. And he probably will share a little bit more about that with him. Scott and I became friends when I was working on my uncle's farm on the other side of the family. When I was in high school, I went every summer and worked on my uncle's farm. And this 12-year-old boy came to work on the farm, and I was kind of resentful because I like to be the attention. And here's another guy coming in, and he's going to take a little attention from my aunt and uncle that I worked on the farm. But we became very close. We got a bond that summer, very close bond. And unbeknownst to me, he was kind of admiring, and I was inspiring to him. Now he inspires me with his art, and 4 years my younger, he started probably 20 some odd years ago sculpting. He called me one day and said, I'm going to start sculpting. And I said, oh, great. And then he called me and said, my first piece is ready. I went and looked at it. I looked at it, and I nodded, and I left, and I thought, God bless him. Because I didn't think it was that good compared to my uncle's art. But this man does everything first class and head first and 110%. And he worked and worked and studied. And I look up to this man every day. He's inspired me not only in art and what he's accomplished in art, but he's inspired me in life. And he is basically, through his love for humanity, love for his family and me, has inspired me to do some good things with my family. And so with that said, I introduce my cousin Scott, David Scott Rogers.
I am really grateful to be here. It's really a privilege to be able to share one's life, one's, I'm going to turn this sucker off. To share one's life, one's vision, one's dreams, what one does in life. And I'd like to start out by sharing a story with you. In 1978, I was a senior in high school in McKinney, Texas. And prior to that, I rode bulls, I was on the rodeo team, played football, ran track, threw the discus, trapped, hunted in the woods, was a Boy Scout, went to church. Zero part of my life was art. Zero. Had nothing to do with it. Never painted, never drew, never went anywhere. Lived out in the country, had 7 brothers and sisters. Lived in an old Sears mail order farmhouse. And what happened is Beth Stapleton came into my life. And she was my senior high school English teacher. And at the end of the year, we did a field trip. We were about 30 miles from Dallas. It was out in the country then. And she loaded us all up into a bus, drove us to Dallas, and for the first time in my life, I saw what you might call culture. He saw Romeo and Juliet. I'd never seen a play before in my life. And I remember sitting there in the seat, up in the balcony, watching this play, and there was something that triggered inside of me that says, there's a part of life out there that I know nothing about. There's a part of life out there that people dedicate themselves to that I know nothing about. And there was a part of me that wondered, I want to be part of that, or I want to be part of what I'm seeing out there. I want that in my life, because it made me feel different. It made me feel good inside to see what I was seeing, and I wanted more of that. And so, Paul, is that thing still working?
It's a black screen right
Okay. Okay. Is there somebody that could assist us with that?
I'm afraid I'm going Here we go.
Okay. We're gonna. Is that? Okay. So. And something else happened where I triggered that feeling. So I'm in high school. I basically was where you guys are at. Are very many of you brand new to art? Raise your hand. Or raise your hand. Okay. So who has created art here? Who has created art? Okay. Fantastic. Painters? Sculptors? Who here has tried sculpting? 1, 2, 3, 4 of you? Okay. What other kinds of art have you done? What's that? What other kinds of art have some of you done? Those that didn't raise their hand. Digital? Pottery? Awesome. This first slide is amazing to me because when I start a new sculpture, I'm asking for a miracle. I'm really displacing air such that people feel something. And I want to share with you what happened in my life. This man right here is my uncle. That's me on the left when I had a little bit of hair. That's my uncle Grant Speed. And next one, Paul. This piece right here was the greatest piece that I'd ever seen him sculpt. And I wanted to own that piece. And that was when I was in 1982, and I was a little bit out of high school, about 3 years out of high school, but I wanted to own that piece. I had no money. And what happened is I went to college, got a degree, started selling oil and gas wells, and started making money. My degree's in finance and accounting. And here I am, 28, 29 years old, never sculpted, never painted, never did pottery, never did digital, didn't exist back then. And I saw this sculpture that he did in 1982, and I wanted it. I wanted this piece in my life. And it came available that it was sold out. I couldn't get it. But somebody who had one, they died. And so they put it in an estate sale. Have y'all heard of an estate sale? Where they sell stuff with people who passed on. And one came available, and I had a guy at a gallery bid on it for me, and I bought that thing. And I took it home, and I had it in my house for 6 months. And I came home from work one day, and I looked at that sculpture, and there was a part of me deeper than deep, right here, and it said, I can do that. And I went home, and I went to the local craft store, bought clay, and I started sculpting. Paul, this is my first piece. Isn't that a masterpiece? Don't you want to take that home and just show all your neighbors and friends and call everybody over and have a party so they can see this piece? That's a boat anchor. That's ugly. There's nothing inviting about that piece, but that was my first piece, and for some reason I took a picture of it. Can't believe I did. But that's really a sad Thank you. Thank you. That's a sad piece right there. Okay? But, Paul, we'll give you the next one. This is the guy that turned my life around. You'll have people come into your life that literally when they say something, it'll ring right here in your heart. And it's like yourself talking to you, but it just happens to come from another person. And this man right here, I took a class from. His name's Fritz White, lived in Loveland, Colorado, and ended up taking 5 professional workshops from him. And he said the only reason beginning artists continue to sculpt, they don't know how bad they really are. But, go ahead, Paul. I took a class from him, and after the class, during the class in 5 days, I created this sculpture right here. And there were other artists, professional artists in the class that told me, don't sculpt that. Nobody is going to buy somebody getting killed. Do not buy that, or don't sculpt that. And I didn't listen to them because I was sculpting from my heart. This was me. And so I sculpted this piece and put it in a gallery in Dallas, Texas. They sold it the next day. They sold, or all 30 in the edition sold. I made $90,000. And I thought, maybe I can do this as a living. And that was in 1991 that I took that class. And by 1994, I was making my living full-time sculpting. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. How big is that piece there?
It's about 18, each piece is about 18 inches, and he's about 16 to 16 and a half inches.
Thank you.
And
30 editions.
Editions of 30. There's 30 of these that I sold.
As an artist, you can say, I want to make 30 of these, or I want to make 50 of these, and that's it. That's all there is to be made.
And we destroy the mold. That's the end of them. And thank you for your question. Anytime you have a question and you're feeling to ask a question, please raise your hand. One of the things that in life, if you feel to ask a question and you don't, you sabotage your own life. And you sabotage the group. If you have a question, raise your hand. Okay? Go ahead for the next one, Paul. As I started sculpting and sculpting and sculpting, I would stay up. I would work oil and gas all day, feed my family, come home, have dinner, and I would sculpt from 8 at night till 1 or 2 in the morning. And I did this for like a solid year and a half. And I started to hurt myself physically because my body just couldn't take it. And finally, my Uncle Grant said, Scott, if you're smart about this business, you'll realize you'll never arrive. You'll never arrive. And that took the pressure off, because what it means is it's a journey. It's a journey right now. People say, when did you realize you're good? I don't really think I'm good. I just, because, and we'll get into this, I get chills when I say it, because I'm a student. I'm a student. What can I learn from you? What can I learn from you? What can I learn from you? Because I haven't arrived yet. Okay, Paul? This is a man that came into my life. This is a sculpture at Brook Green Gardens in South Carolina. And what I want to share with you is you can learn from every person that comes into your life. And what he taught me, the words, as I'm sitting there sculpting, what I hear are words from my teachers. And because you can't be what you can't see. You can't be what you haven't heard. It's like you can't speak what you haven't heard. And I'll give you an example here. His famous words are, where does a piece need more mass? Paul? So I'm at an art show, and this chicken was not in the sculpture. And there's an artist that walks by while I'm sculpting on this piece, and he says, you know, that was my piece, I put a chicken up there. So I wadded up some clay and stuck a chicken up there, and it looked good to me. You know what I mean? Paul, give me another one. this is a fascinating piece right here. And this goes back to Herb Minnery's words, where does a piece need more mass? See the piece on the left? That's the same piece, but that's how I finished it first. I finished the piece here on the left, but I didn't like it. Something was off. And it sat in my studio for about 6 months. And then finally dawned on me, I need to put a Civil War slicker on it. This is from the Civil War. And can you see the difference in the two pieces? Hands down, this one on the right is better. Paul? So I take this sculpture to the foundry, and it's about 4 inches shorter. I had finished it in my studio. You can see how big that thing is, 54 inches tall. And before I left, I just thought, I'm going to put another inch of clay on top of that. I'm going to put another inch on top of that. By the time I was finished, I'd probably added at least 5 inches of clay to push the envelope, where 1 more quarter of an inch would have made it out of balance. But these were the words of Herb Minnery running around in my mind. And how many of y'all have words of your teachers, people from your family, your mom and dad, your grandpa, your friends' words that come to you in your mind? And it's kind of cool. Paul? I'd love to possibly have this put on my tombstone. I don't know. And because how many of you really want to know? You want to know, don't you? You want to know math. You want to know how to be good in sports. You want to know how to sculpt. You want to know how to, whatever it is, you want to know how to sing. But I want you to feel the truth of I don't know. The moment I say I know, I close myself off from inspiration from myself and from other people, other influences in my life. The moment you say I know, you literally slam the door. And so you're not teachable. People can't share with you. Have you ever known anybody that you couldn't tell them anything because they knew everything? You know? And it's like teachers or your parents, they want to share with you, but you already know. And it's kind of an interesting dynamic to open your mind up and just say, I don't know. And to me, that's you're humble, you're teachable. Paul? And I'm going to give you an example on this. So I'm sculpting this piece right here in an art gallery in Santa Fe. And this rancher comes in there in Texas. This is in Santa Fe. And he's got the big belt buckle on, the cowboy hat, and that cowboy stance that they do. You've seen them. And he's looking at my horse. Now, I'm not a cowboy. I wasn't raised on a ranch. I don't know horses like a lot of people do. And I saw him looking at my horse. And I did the greatest thing I could have done. Anybody know what I did? What did I do? No. I see this man looking at my horse. What do I do? Well, who said it? What? I asked him. I opened my mouth and I said, do you see anything wrong? And he said, yeah. And I said, what? And he says, the horse looks a little weedy, son. And I said, what's a weedy? And he says, the hips are too narrow. Bad conformation. A person that knows horses isn't going to buy that piece. And then I opened my mouth again and I said, would you stay here? I've got some clay. Would you stay here and show me what a good conformation on a horse's hips looks like? He says, I'd love to. Okay? And so he worked with me, and we worked on these horses' hips right there. Well, about a week later, I'm still in this gallery working on this piece, and there's another guy that comes in. And he's looking, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a rifle laying across, there's the barrel, there's a rifle laying across the horn of that horse. And he's looking at that rifle. And he's looking, he's not saying a word. And I do the greatest thing I could have done in that moment. What did I do? I asked him a question. I said, you know what rifle you're looking at? And he says, yeah, it's a 72 Winchester. And I said, do you know anything about them? He says, I build them. And I said, do you see anything wrong with it? He says, yeah, there's some things I'd change. And I said, would you mind working with me? And so for about 30 minutes, we worked on that rifle, and he pointed things out so that it could be accurate. You start to see a pattern here, guys? It's amazing when you have an issue in your life. I don't care if it's sculpting, I don't care if it's art, I don't care if it's any kind of a problem in life. There's some magic in asking if that right person comes into your life to ask a question. Miracles will happen. It's like people come into my life to support me with my art. And I'll get into that in a little bit. Go ahead, Paul. Okay, this is another gunfight. You know that first gunfight that you saw? Which gunfight do you like better? That one or this one? This one. I looked at that first gunfight and I thought, you know, I have 15 years more knowledge. I can do that better. I'm going to do it again. Any of y'all heard of the painter Monet? Yeah. How many times, do you know how many times he painted his lily pond? Like maybe 1,000? Okay. And so I did the gunfight, and I thought, man, this is great. And I took it to the foundry. Where they're cast into bronze. And see how that guy getting shot is kind of like that? Well, at the foundry, the guy who welds my pieces together, because these are in about 15, 18 different pieces, the hand was cut off on purpose in the mold, and he welded, so the hand is like this. He took that hand and he welded it like that. Okay? And I went to the foundry to inspect my work, and I looked at that hand that was up, and I go, I like that better. Paul. I like that better. And I don't know if you can see it, but the hand is up. And I didn't change it because I was smart enough to recognize somebody else had the answer. Okay, Paul? This is fascinating. Remember where I'm telling you people coming into my life? So I had the inspiration. I'm going to sculpt a camel. I'm just going to sculpt a camel, and I'm going to call it the New Star. And I'd never seen it. I'd never been around camels. I live in Utah. Do you know how many camels there are in Utah? And so I'm going to sculpt a camel. And so I go to the books. I go to the internet. I'm researching camels, how they sit on them, all the accoutrements, but I really feel like I need a camel to get this piece done. And so what did I do? What did I do? I asked. Well, I actually opened my mouth. I said, I'm sculpting a camel. I can't find a camel. You know what I mean? And I say that to the guys at the foundry. The guy who is the production manager at the foundry, you'll never guess what he said. My mom has a camel.
What?
And I'm thinking, you gotta be kidding me. And he says, well, let me call her, see if she'll let you come look at her camel. And so he calls her and he said, she has a 2-hump camel. Do you need a 2-hump camel? I said, no, I need a 1-hump camel. And so, well, let me make another phone call. So he calls his mom, and his mom is friends with a lady who lives in Park City, who is a camel veterinarian in Park City, Utah. That's where they had the Winter Olympics, guys. If you look at this picture right here, that's the mountains of Park City. Right here, I believe, is the slide where where they shoot down and go flying. That's the ski resort in Park City. And she was a camel veterinarian in that mountainous region with Clyde, who was 10 years old. Clyde's died now. But do you follow what I'm saying, where things come into your life? If you open your mouth. Yeah, Paul? And here's something else. I had a guy call me. He's a billionaire. You know the UPS trucks, FedEx trucks? He builds every one of them all over the world. okay? And he has a ranch called Cibola Creek Ranch. And he wanted me to sculpt a monumental buffalo for him. And I thought, that's easy. I'm going to sculpt the buffalo. So I created this buffalo right here, and I was so proud. I was so proud to send this buffalo to him in an email. He's going to love it. And so I send off the picture to John Poindexter, and I give him about half a day, and I'm expecting a phone call. No call. And I finally call him, John, don't you love the buffalo? And there's this long pause, and he says, Scott, I know you. I've seen your work for years. That's not you. He called me on my crap. He held me to my excellence. He says, that's not you. I want you to, that's not you. I want that thing to move. Paul. So I created this one. That's the exact same buffalo. I used the exact same clay that you saw in that previous photo, and I created this one. And it was about 10 inches tall. And when he saw a picture of this, he said, that's you, Paul. And so this is the monument that I created for John, 7 feet tall, 12.5 feet wide, Paul. And the crazy thing about it is, if you go on the internet and look up monumental buffalo, you won't find any of them on 2 legs, because you're dealing with 1,000 pounds on 2 little bitty legs. But I didn't care about the problem. That was somebody else's problem to figure out. That was the foundry's. I was going to do it. And the foundry figured out how to put 4-inch square round tubing up through the legs and cross brace it in the body. Paul? This is the piece as the finished bronze without the patina, Paul. This is the sculpture installed at Cibola Creek Ranch. And y'all are too young to probably remember Justice Scalia, but is that Doug?
Good to meet you.
These guys would know Justice Scalia. He was a Supreme Court justice, and he died on a ranch in Texas, and this is the ranch that he died on. He probably died within 200 or 300 yards of where this buffalo was coming this way. Next one, Paul. This is at Buffalo Ridge Golf Course. The first tee is right here, and that's the 18th green. And so just I sell multiples of them. So Paul, this may be one of the most important things you get anything out of this little time together. That most of the happiness and the pain that will come to you in life will be a direct result of how you treat the relationships in your life. Guaranteed. And I actually say this so much to my daughter. She made it in a frame and had it calligraphy, and it gave it to me for Christmas about 2 years ago. It's not about the business, it's about the relationship. Paul? This piece, and I want to share this with you, because what I do is I have relationships with people through my artwork. My artwork just allows me to have relationships with you. I'm having a relationship with you right now. And so I created this piece, and last September. I'm having breakfast with a man who I've developed a relationship with in Indianapolis. And he said, tell me about the work that you have in the show this year, Scott. And so I tell him about this piece. And I said, Jim, I created a piece 3 years ago that I felt would be worthy to be in the White House. And that was my intention to sculpt that piece. That piece I was sculpting with the intention of being able to feel comfortable if it was in the White House. And he said, what are you doing to make that happen? And long story short, May 22nd, this piece was delivered to the White House. And on December 15th, my wife and I have been, December 14th, my wife and I have been invited to a Christmas party to present this piece officially. And so relationships, the relationships. Paul, next one, go down. Okay. Okay, a lot of times people say, why do you sculpt what you sculpt? Or how do you decide what you're going to sculpt? And what I do is I sculpt, I create what makes me go, wow. Have you ever read a book? You ever see a sunset? You ever watch sports? And it just makes your heart kind of open up a little bit. And you go, wow. You ever do that? Yeah? What makes you go, wow? Well, I'm at a truck stop somewhere in Texas. I think it was Wichita Falls. And this was a postcard that I saw hanging on the rack. Okay? I saw hanging on the rack. And I take that postcard and I go, wow. And I didn't want to sculpt it, but it just made me go, wow. And I like to have things in my life that make me go, wow. And so I bought it. And I just kind of, it's in my paperwork or what have you. And as I'm going through life, 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the later, I pull it out and I'm inspired. I want to sculpt that. So now, as an artist, what do? Paul? It's a rational decision-making process to learn artistic principles, Paul. And so I created this bronze. And this bronze is not an image of what you saw in that previous picture. I studied hundreds of these women that rode rodeos back in the day. Hundreds of them. Studied their pictures and kind of picked and pulled from the best to create this work of art. Paul? I loved it so much I did a tall one of her. She's about 7 feet tall. Paul? I went to my grandmother's funeral. I went to my grandmother's funeral in San Angelo, Texas, and it was solemn, and there were people crying. We buried her. Then we went back to the church, and people were just kind of quiet. And then somebody went around with a video camera.
Bless you.
And they said, you know, what do you remember about Mama Opal? What do you remember about Mama Opal? Do you have a story? Do you have a joke she told or anything? And then somebody told a joke. Somebody started laughing. Pretty soon there was an impromptu talent show that broke out on the stage there at the church. And they were laughing and singing. And I remember thinking while I'm watching this as a kid, this is a funeral? And people are just having a ball. Do you remember that, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so from that experience came my life in bronze, celebrating a life. Paul? I'm at the Denver airport and I see this guy right here. And I'm not Jewish, but he made me go, wow. I thought, that's cool. And so I asked him to take his picture, and you can see how excited he was to take his picture because these guys don't like their picture taken. They don't want you to take their picture. But I showed him my business card. He couldn't speak English. And I asked him permission to take his picture. I didn't try to do it on the slide. I asked him, and he let me take his picture, 2 pictures, and he went like that. That was it. And from that came this sculpture right here called Hear, O Israel. Paul? That's the piece in bronze. Paul? I still get a wow when I look at this thing. This is an amazing picture to me. It just leapt at my heart. And I knew that I had to sculpt it, Paul. And so I created, go back. That is not the sculpture, but it inspired it. Because I don't want to sculpt what I see, I want to sculpt what it makes me feel and put my own twist on it. Okay, Paul? Go ahead, next one. This picture right here is also in the White House. It was done by an artist by the name of Arnold Freeberg. And he said, how dare anyone attempt to create life, portray life, unless they first lived it? Because you sculpt or you create what you know. You know, you create what you know. And so you live life, Paul. This is a fascinating piece. This was the last piece that I did when I was still married in 1994. And I knew nobody would buy it. I knew nobody would buy it because it's too violent, As the Battle Rages. And here's a fascinating thing. I sculpted the piece, cast it into bronze, and I put it in an art show, and a man and a woman came up to me, and the man said, I want to buy that piece it reminds me of my divorce. And then another lady and man came up from the art, at the same art show, and they said, I want to buy that piece, it reminds me of my divorce. And both of them had been happily remarried, and they had learned amazing lessons from the pain, and they had healed, found somebody, and they were in a happy marriage, and they wanted something like this in their home to remind them. Fascinating, fascinating. But what it tells you is that there's a connection spiritually or energetically between a work of art and when people look at it. I don't know if you've ever been moved by a piece of work like that, when you've seen it on TV or in a book, at a museum. And there's one time I went to my knees. It was in Kerrville, Texas. I saw this amazing piece. It was called Winning the Iron Shirt. It was about 25 feet tall. Go ahead, Paul. I sculpt what I know. I've experienced this in the mountains of northern Arizona. And there's a friend of my dad's who ran cattle on 25 square miles of government land. And we were rounding up in the spring, sometimes it snows during the cattle drives in the spring roundup. And there was a mother that had never had a calf before, and she wasn't letting the calf nurse. And so the man had, the rancher had me keep the mama away with my horse while he went and got the calf. There's, I don't know if you can see the ball in the calf, there's his mouth and nose right there. And he put the calf on his horse and rode it into the other animals, took the calf off, and the mama, of course, followed. And then he said, she'll get the idea of watching the other mamas. We'll let it nurse. Paul? I experienced, this is called When We Get in a New Cook. And I experienced this up in Alaska, working a gold mine in 1988 for 3 months. And our cook left, and we were on bologna sandwiches and Vienna sausages for a couple of weeks until they hired somebody else. So I sculpt and put the feeling in to what I know. You follow? Sculpt what you know, and that way you can be unique with your artwork. Don't sculpt or don't paint, don't do what other people do. Do what's from within you, and it'll have feeling. Paul? So I'm at the, I used to be a bull rider when I was in high school. We had a rodeo team. And there was a man that came into the gallery where I was sculpting, and he gave me this photo right here. And he says, maybe you'll get inspired to sculpt something along these lines one day. And so I had that picture, and this bull's called Whiskey's Rebel in the PBR. I got that off, you can go on the internet and see that, but he gave me that photo, Paul. And so this is the sculpture that I created. And Paul, that's that back side. Next one. So I want you to look. This is my first sculpture ever. And that one is actually still in clay at a gallery in Santa Fe. We'll cast it in January. So that's 28 years apart. Do you follow? Isn't that cool? Paul? The word sculpture and feelings are synonymous. Paul? I want you to just see what you feel. A lot of times what happens is you're looking at a physical form. You're looking at a physical form, but then feelings come from the physical form. And as a student of art, you kind of want to ask, how did the sculptor make that happen, Paul? And here, go back. I always knew after I did this. Oh, here's an interesting story. I had this sculpture in my studio for 12 years because nobody is going to buy a passed out drunk with a bottle. Nobody. Who's going to buy a passed out drunk with a bottle? And I finally, I'm literally had it in my hands. I'm going to throw it away or I'm going to take it to the gallery. It's going to be one way or the other. So I ended up taking it actually to an art show, to a gallery and an art show, and sold all 30 of them. People connected with that piece because people have had in their life somebody who has struggled. You know, some of you guys right now might have somebody in your life that's struggling with that, and it might touch you right here. and you feel that hurt. And it's when you feel that hurt and you kind of, you'll experience those feelings and you can let it out and heal, Paul. And I knew I could do a better job. So you're looking at about 15, 20 years apart. I knew I could do a better job with that piece. And this is called The Fallen Man. And that isn't, in each way, some of us, are fallen. And, I'm struggling in chemistry. I can't do it. I'm getting my butt kicked on the football field. I can't do it. And we just get up, because of that something deep inside that makes us want to be better and that knows that we can. Paul? There's a guy that I studied with in Arizona. His name is Stanley Blyfeld. He was the sculptor of the United States. And these 3 words ring in my head. And I took his class for 5 days. And I remember 3 words. So I paid airfare down, hotel, paid for the class, probably $2,500 to remember 3 words that this man said 20 years ago. But it was worth every penny, because those words have made me my living and a lot of money, and put feeling into my work. It comes back. When you put it out, it comes back tenfold. Sculpture is silhouette, Paul. And what I wanted to show you, y'all know what this is, a horse, right? But that doesn't look like a horse. But you see the silhouette? The silhouette is of a horse. It's of a draft horse called a Shire. Y'all have heard of Budweiser Clydesdales? Well, this is a type of a draft horse like a Clydesdale, but it's called a Shire. But I wanted to show you that doesn't look like a horse. It feels like a horse, and it's because of that silhouette. Oh. Here's an example of another silhouette, and it's like the Nike swoosh, a bucking horse, Paul. Silhouette is line and feeling. And people don't remember what I drew, painted, or sculpted. People remember how they felt when they viewed your work. Like, you probably, like if I just said, tell me the last 10 things your grandma said, or your mom said, or your dad said, you probably couldn't remember. But if I said, how did they make you feel when you're around them? You can remember that. You know what I mean? And, Paul? So, y'all get much feeling from these 3 circles? Who gets a whole lot of feeling from these 3 circles? Paul? Same 3 circles. Who gets feeling from these? Come on, guys. Who gets feelings from these? Yeah. Mickey Mouse. And it's the same 3 circles, but it's how you arrange them. Paul? Okay. Okay, we've already covered the next one. I'm going to go over some interesting things about art here. So, this is my boy Nick up at the cabin, and he's carrying wood. Okay, can you tell me what I did to make him feel more movement? Who can tell me what I did? What? More wood. Anything else? More body and face. And how did I do that with his body? Well, it made him lean more back. And one of the things that my mentor taught me is to exaggerate to the point where it's not real. And just maybe come back from that just a whisper, and people will feel your work. And so I had him lean back almost to the point where he was going to fall. Okay, Paul? When I decide to put a concept into clay, an idea, I hold in mind a dominant shape that encompasses the whole piece. This dominant overriding shape gives a wholeness to a sculpture. Okay, and this is where, when I deal with a work of art, I'm not dealing with subject matter. So, how many of y'all have seen the football sculpture over there? A few of you? Okay. A lot of time when you look at that thing, you'll think, oh, he sculpted a bunch of guys on a football team. No. Okay, and I'll get into that. Paul? Okay. You see this shape? It's a figure 8. It's a clamshell that's collapsing on itself. And you can almost see him spinning, Paul. This is the sculpture that contains that shape, that figure eight collapsing on itself. This was the piece in 1994 that turned my life around, where I got that sculpture is geometric shape. See the shape of the egg? The most beautiful shape in all of sculpture. That shape encompasses the entire piece, Paul. So I love that shape. I've used it numerous times. Here's that egg shape, but a comma, a little bite's taken out. So I hold these shapes in mind while I'm creating, Paul. Here's the teardrop. That's the egg shape that has a little tip on it. You see the egg, or the teardrop, and instead of the teardrop coming down, it's going sideways, Paul. The corkscrew, that twist. I love that one. I've got another piece going right now that has that twist. Paul. Okay, I'm over in France, and I'm looking at a mausoleum where somebody has died and they built a sculpture on. Okay, and on this mausoleum, I learned that the artist had created using these three shapes. This is called the wave principle. And so if you see a wave, the wave is starting like this, and then the wave is starting to crest, and then the wave crashes. Okay, Paul? And so see the wave building, cresting, and then crashing into the ground. Shape, 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 Paul. A student of mine, I created this piece right here, and a student of mine pointed out it was a double star. And I loved that he was able to discover that. Paul. Sculpt shapes, don't create words. Paul. Okay, bunch of circles, right? Bunch of circles. What can you do with a bunch of circles? Really? Okay, I want you to look at this. This is kind of magical. Okay, Paul? Go back. Go forward. It's circles. It's circles. I had an amazing experience in Idaho as I was coming down the Middle Fork of the Salmon on a raft about 10 years ago. We'd been on the river about 5 days, and I'm standing on a cliff overlooking, and it was call it what you want, call it believe me or not, but it's gospel true. There was like a window of time that was maybe a second, maybe a half a second, and everything, it was as soon as I saw it, it was gone. But everything was circles. How all of nature is circular, and how one side of the tree, if you go outside and look at how a tree grows, it's really a giant circle, and probably about 15, 20 circles to make up a tree. It's amazing. And that's where I learned about the circle of life, Paul. Okay, after doing a bit of my work, you may not believe, or would you believe, my aim is not to sculpt reality. You look at that football team, you look at a lot of my work here, I could go back and show you, you might not believe that I'm after abstract art, Paul. Okay, first off, this makes me go, wow. This makes me go, wow, like you wouldn't believe when I saw this, okay? And so I started doing more research, and I researched for months on these old-timey football photos and looking at these guys, okay, Paul? So what I started with, this is abstract art, right? Have y'all seen stuff like this in the books? You know, where it's kind of, that might be a blue circle or a red one and some lines, okay? What you've got here is two circles that are intersecting, and that creates what's called a vesica piscis. And then I put these circles here, one coming up, and it's almost like one's kind of bounced off, and it starts to create movement. And your eye starts to ride around on these lines. You know, it might go around and then come inside. You follow? Okay, so there's figure eights. Okay, next one. Okay, then what I decided to do was to put some other geometric shapes in. So I put some triangles in, triangles here, and they're not on the same. And then I put these other circles. And then this one right here, let me see, this one right here is going to be the most important right here. That's the mathematical ratio of 1.618, and it's called the golden mean. Anybody here heard of the golden mean? One? Two? No, just one person. This is called the golden mean, and I'll show you in just a little bit. But and so give me the next one, Paul. So I start with an empty mold board, Paul, and then I make wire figures, and then I start to put clay on them, Paul. And so I rough them all in. And then I start in with the anatomy. To speak real briefly on anatomy, there's a guy who taught anatomy at the Art Students League of New York, Robert Beverly Hale. He taught a 10-week anatomy class for 40 years. He taught a 10-week anatomy class. I took that anatomy class 23 times to learn anatomy. And so one of the things I want to share with you about school, you're in school and you go, yeah, gotta go to school maybe, I don't want to go to that English class. I want to learn what a noun is or an adverb. I don't want to do that. How do you structure sentence? The reason that you go to school, for me, why you go to school is to teach yourself how to learn when you get out of school. And so if you don't want to learn when you get out of school, because that's really where your learning takes place, is, that's why I go to school, is because I'm teaching myself like I taught myself when I was in high school, Paul. And so that's the small one. This is the small one, and it doesn't look exactly like the monument. I wanted to make it better. I wanted to make the monument better. Okay, Paul? And so this is the clay in my studio of the large one. And even here I've made a lot of changes from this to the finished piece. Paul? Okay. I think we're out of time, aren't we?
I got a couple more minutes, but the buses are out front whenever you're ready to move them that direction.
Okay. Awesome.
Thank you.
You bet. You bet. Okay. There's a lot I could say, but I'm going to hit some highlights. Paul? Just showing. Okay. If you saw that sculpture there, that was a sculpture of a stagecoach, and I sculpted that with a circle in it. So go back to that one, Paul. You know how I said I use circles in my sculptures? And a lot of sculpture, the circles. So you look at that piece and you go, where's the circle? Paul. So if you're looking from the ceiling down, I created it in an arc as part of the circle, so that when the viewer stands there, they're part of that piece from that distance. And people will actually move themselves without even knowing that they're doing it to look at the piece to be part of the circle. Paul? You can see the curve there. Next. This is a fascinating one because I use geometric shapes a lot. You see the geometric shape there, a triangle? You see the triangle? And I purposely left this part of the triangle out so that people fill it in subliminally in their mind, and they become an active viewing part of the piece without even knowing about it. So what an artist does is they lead a viewer's eye. Paul? This right here is one of the most important things in all of art. Who's here familiar with that painting? It's one of the most famous paintings in the whole world. It's a Sistine Chapel. It's Michelangelo. It's Adam and God. The fingers touching, right? Okay. It's a mathematical formula that really makes this thing work. And so, won't go into it, but just trust me on this. From the edge of the painting to the edge of that painting, it's 1.618 right there in that space. And then from the top of God to the bottom of Adam, Again, it's a double golden mean. Paul? I put a double golden mean in this piece without knowing about it, and all 30 of them sold out in less than a year. This is called the lure of gold. And so this gold nugget is a golden mean this way, and if you turn the piece like you can in a sculpture, you'll see the other golden mean, or the other golden mean. Paul? This is a piece that's actually in a museum in Phoenix. And I did this about 4 years into my sculpting, about 1994. And I always knew I could do it better. And so 2 years ago, I gave it another shot. Paul? That's that same piece. But this time, I put a double golden mean in it. That's right there. If you flipped it, it would be what you saw with that Sistine Chapel piece that Michelangelo did. Paul? The people that are drawn to this one, they're drawn right here to nothing, but they're drawn to the area where the double golden mean would be. And this has been one of my most successful pieces. Paul? Probably going to end with this one. I'm going to end with this one. This one is really special to me because it was my mentor's idea. My mentor had this idea back in the 80s, the 1980s, and he couldn't do it. And because he had an idea, I said, I said to Fritz, have you ever had an idea that you couldn't make work? And he said, yeah, an Indian portaging a canoe up a cliff. And I thought, what a great idea. And he says, I've never been able to do it. And so I went home, and about a year later, I called him, and I said, Fritz, can I try that idea? I think I can do it. He says, go for it. And so I sculpted and sculpted and sculpted and sculpted, and I could not make it work. I could sculpt an Indian going up a cliff. That's not the point. The point is to make it a piece of fine art. And I could not make it work. And I called him, I said, I can't make it work. He says, I couldn't either. Well, about 5 or 6 years goes by, and I'm at an art show in Arizona, and all of a sudden, I get what he called the divine concept, that flash of brilliance. The key was to have the Indian come down the cliff, not go up, because it opened it up where you could see and make it a piece of fine art and involve the viewer. And so I created this piece on the left, and he is a month away from dying. And I call him to show him that I had done the piece. Did he tell me it was any good? No. What did he tell me? He said the rocks are wrong. He's a month away from dying. He's been my teacher for 20 years. And he's critiquing my work. Is that cool? That's cool. That's cool. He said the rocks are wrong. He says, and he told me how to sculpt the rocks. And now I know how to sculpt the rocks. And so that's the piece on the left. I put it in a museum show in Indianapolis and won first prize. And a lot of money. And so, awesome, isn't it? He's still teaching. And I'm still the student. And sometimes I still talk to him. So, all right, guys. Thank you for listening. You've been a great audience. I'd love to have us go out to the football monument, and I want you to ask questions. When we get out there, I want a question from everyone. Come on down, guys. Come on down. There's a lot of people.
Oh, that's your hand. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What time period is this?
Okay, guys. Come as close as you want.
I have a question.
Yes.
What time period is this supposed to take place at?
The name of the sculpture is called Football, Circa 1890. And the word circa means about. So it's not 1890, it's in that era. A little before, a little after, in that era. Any other questions?
How heavy is
It weighs about 5,000 pounds. About 5,000 pounds. It's made out of bronze. Bronze is mostly copper. And,
Louder, Scott.
What?
Louder.
Bronze is about 95% copper. And about 10 different metals mixed in. Hey guys, let's get in so I don't have to scream so loud. Come in a little, let's pinch it in, turn a little bit sideways so we can really see the piece. Yeah, kneel down. Do double row here, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
How long did it take you to make this?
3 years from start to deliver. 3 years. And what was fascinating is I had 2 artists assist me. You saw the small one, the picture of the small one in the library, right? About 34, 36 inches wide. There's what's called a point up. Would it shock you if you knew that Michelangelo didn't sculpt most of his work? Have any of y'all seen Michelangelo's David? Any of you seen Michelangelo's David or his Pietà? He did not sculpt those. He sculpted what's called a maquette, or the small one that may be about half life size, and then he paid other people to rough them in about 80%, and which would take years. And then he would come the last 6 months to a year and finish them off. Same thing here. Paid 2 artists for a year's worth of work to take the small one and do what's called the busy work, or the point up, where the artwork has already been created. And then I come in where and spend a year on it and do the last 20% and put in the detail. So.
What aspects from your first model did you change?
Say that again?
What aspects from your first, beginning model did you change to
This guy on the far left, I gave him a black eye. As I was doing my research, and I found a photo of some guys that had participated in sports, and all 3 of them had their faces just swollen. A couple of them with their eyes swollen where they couldn't even see. So on the small one, he's got both eyes open. Also, on the small one, see this guy right here where he's holding a cup? On the small one, he's holding a whiskey flask. And it was decided that that probably wouldn't be the best message at a high school. And so we put a tin cup right here. On the larger one, or on the small one, see this nose guard? He's holding it right here. And I felt that the composition would be better to have it on his leg right here. Those are some of the major ones. There's a lot of others, but none of them are coming to me right now. Any other questions? Let me just, if you feel a question, raise your hand. And I'd like to share a little bit about the piece with you. Artistically, this piece had a really unusual problem. I was dealing with a lot of vertical lines. See the vertical lines with the men standing? And so probably one of the most, if not the most important guy in the whole piece that really makes this piece work as a work of art is which guy?
The guys are stretched out.
The guy is laying down. If you take him out of the piece, you've got too many vertical lines. He acts as a foil against the vertical lines. And then, once I put that major dominant vertical line in the piece, I put other horizontal lines as foils against the verticals. Can you tell me where the other horizontal lines are?
Sort of like the guy's arms.
The guy holding his arms, both of them. And they're not on the same plane, they're on different planes, which is very important. Any other horizontal lines that you see?
Looks like the dude's arms wrapped up or something right there. The
Are you
last
talking
dude on
about
the right,
which guy?
the last dude on the right?
Yes.
Standing up,
Uh-huh.
arms wrapped up.
Yeah. Any other horizontal lines?
The waistline.
The waistline. These vests, these horizontal lines right here. The horizontal lines in the padding. The horizontal line in the belt. The horizontal line in right here. In the he's got his arm sling. Yeah. Just so you'll know, this piece, all bronzes change over time. This piece was delivered and it looked a certain way. And then the sun gets on it. And it slowly will start to change and you'll see colors come out. I'm already starting to see colors that I didn't even know were there. But we put a lot of different chemicals over the piece. Bare bronze is the color of a gold wedding ring. That's the color of bronze. And we take copper. We take copper and we put nitric acid on it and it dissolves the copper, so we've got liquid copper. And we put the copper on the sculpture. And then we brush it back, but it doesn't come out of the recessed areas. Then we take iron nails, we put nitric acid on the nails, and it dissolves, so we've got liquid iron. And we put the iron on, and that's what gives you these browns that you see. There's another chemical called potassium sulfide. That's a liver sulfur, and that's what gives it the black. And you're gonna, as the piece ages, you'll see a lot of different colors coming out. I already start to see colors here. Look at the beautiful colors inside on this guy. And it probably won't get as good looking as it will look, as it should look, until it's about 300 years old. Bronze ages and really gets beautiful over time, but the only thing that gives that beautiful color is time. Time on the chemicals mixed with the elements outside, and the snow and the wind and the rain, and it's kind of neat. Any questions? Let me see if one of the things that's kind of interesting, it's fascinating because every square quarter inch on this piece I've seen, and it's there for a purpose. Like, why is this guy here? Why don't I have this guy over here? Why don't I have him 3 over? Why don't I have him on that end? Why do I have him with this guy? Can anybody answer that? Why do I have these two guys together? Anybody want to take a stab? Okay, this is the toughest guy on the team. He's the biggest guy on the team. This guy is the most mild guy on the team. Can you feel that? Can you see that and feel it? That's why I put them together, so that they'll play off of each other, and so he'll be more tough feeling and he'll be more docile. He wouldn't have that same docile feeling if he was with somebody else. That's why I put them together. And I wanted to give the toughest guy on the team a black eye. I didn't want to give the little guy the black eye, because everybody's okay if the big guy gets hurt. You know, people don't want to hurt the little guy. So there's these things that kind of bounce off in my head as I'm playing with the characters.
one of the things that's fascinating with this piece is I want you to look at a certain place. Where do I want you to look? Where do I want you to look first? To just drive it home. Where's that God and Adam's finger? Where is that? Where is it?
Like about there. I don't know. I can't really explain it.
Okay. Where do I want you to look? I actually showed you in the library. It's right here.
That's where
Is that where you pointed?
Yeah, that's where I pointed. Just the middle.
Okay, this is the double golden mean right there. And so I want you to look at this guy with the football. And there's certain things that I did to make you look there. One is I opened his mouth. Anytime you open somebody's mouth in sculpture and art and painting, you'll look there. You will look at an open mouth. The other thing I did to make you look here, he is the only one that's really looking straight forward. Nobody else is looking straight forward. Even this guy right here, he's kind of looking down. He's not looking straight forward. Nobody else is really looking forward. This guy kind of is, but he's really not. This guy looking forward, open his mouth, and then he has more true geometric shape in him than anybody on the team. If you look, the geometric shape of the football pulls you in. The triangle of the helmet pulls you in. I want you to see the triangle of the helmet, and it comes across the eyes. And then that goes down to the triangle of the pads. Then it goes down to the triangle of the elbows. You see that? And then that goes into a diamond shape, which then, when you come down here, then you've got the piercing of this triangle that brings you back up. You see where I'm using geometric shape and abstract shape to work with a piece of art. And that's what my mentor would call the magoo of a piece, is that. One of the things that I do, if any of y'all, if y'all look real close, you'll see that there's a lot of texture on the sculpture. It's not smooth. Have you noticed that? Why do I do that? More realistic? What? To add feeling. Okay? I put texture to hold the eye, to grip the eye. Light reflects off of a surface if it's smooth. If it's smooth, see how the light reflects off of this flat right here? Your eye is not drawn there. Your eye is not drawn to this cement. It reflects off the cement. When I put texture in a sculpture, it causes the eye to bounce around on that sculpture, and your eye moves. And it actually moves high and low, high and low, high and low, high and low, high and low. And so it gives movement to something that's not moving. So it's art in its purest form, to create feeling and that realness. You follow? I don't know if that makes sense to you. That's one of the single most important things I do, is that texture in a sculpture. I'm going to share one last thing with you, and if none of you have any more questions, we'll just kind of wrap it up. But I want to share one last thing with you. Sculpture is silhouette. You remember me sharing that with you in the library? Sculpture is silhouette. And when I am dealing with a silhouette, it's literally 360 silhouettes. It's not just one silhouette. I turn it 1 degree, I've got a new silhouette. I turn it 3 more degrees, I've got 3 more silhouettes. So when I'm sculpting this piece, I'm looking at a new silhouette, new silhouette, new silhouette, new silhouette. One of the things that will kill a sculpture is a straight line. Because the eye, it's like you're just looking at this bar. Your eye just goes. It doesn't want to stop. If it does stop, it'll stop at a place where it's interrupted, like right here. But your eye will just move on. Okay? And so this is one that I'm very proud of on this piece, because I've got this quilt on this guy's shoulder, okay? And I can sculpt a quilt, but I didn't want to sculpt a quilt. I'm sculpting a work of fine art. And so I'm looking at this quilt, and I invite each one of you to do this before you leave. I'm sculpting this quilt, and you can see this shape right here, right? Okay, there's a shape where it's kind of wavy over here. And as I'm coming around the sculpture, when it's in clay, it's different. It's still wavy. It's still wavy. And it's still wavy. And it's still wavy. Still wavy. And I get to right here where you're looking with the camera. And can you see, if you take that out right there, can you guys see where it's a straight line? And I go, that's a straight line. I don't like straight lines in my work. And so, how am I going to get rid of that straight line? What am I going to do? And so I had the question, and then the answer presented itself. I tore the quilt, made it a patch. So I had the problem, and that makes that part of the piece more interesting and gives your eye a place to rest. And so that's what I do with these straight lines, is I give your eye a place to rest. And that's what I did right there. That's one of the most important things I could ever share with you in art, is give your eye a place to rest and not just ride off on a straight line. And real quick, did y'all know that they wore these? Who here knew that they wore these back in the 1890s? This is a hard rubber nose mask. And I turned this one upside down so you could see. Right here is what they would bite with their teeth inside. They would bite that with their teeth. So that's turned upside down. And then they had holes drilled in them so they could have air coming through.
So they can breathe.
What's that?
So they can breathe.
So they could breathe better.
And
Yeah.
not die.
And then they would wrap them around their heads with this canvas around their heads. And this guy is a little bit smaller, and so I tied a knot in the back of his, the one that's on his thigh. So that's real history there. That is as real as it gets. I saw a photo of a guy that made hand pads, homemade hand pads. All of these pads that these guys were wearing, they didn't go buy them. They made them. Let me see. There's this jug right here. This is hemp wrapped around a glass bottle. Anybody know why they wrap hemp around a glass bottle that has water in it?
So they won't break.
So it won't break. That's possibly one reason. Good reason.
It doesn't evaporate as quickly.
It doesn't evaporate as quickly. Who said that? Stays cold. Well, how does it stay cold? What? Insulation? Okay, that's one reason. That's one reason. That's okay. You probably hit on something without realizing it. It's kind of cool. Who knew? Have any of y'all ever seen canteens that you can go buy at Walmart and there's canvas on them? Okay. Why is there canvas there? Okay, none of you know? Well, you dip that in water in a stream, and as the water evaporates off the canvas, there's a cooling effect of the water, so that the water stays cool, and also it's insulated by the hemp. It's insulated, but as the water evaporates, there's a cooling effect. And that's why you have canvas on the outside of canteens. And any of y'all ever heard of Custer's Last Stand? 2 of you? The soldiers at Custer's Last Stand, as they were riding to the Little Bighorn, they dipped their canteens in water as they crossed the river, and they hang it on the shady side of their horse so that the shade would keep the water cool, and the water would evaporate and keep the water cool there as well. A lot of the teams would have mascots. You research the old football teams in the 1800s, a lot of them would have dogs, a goat, just different animals, mules, that kind of thing. Any other questions? Y'all ready to wrap it up? All right.
I got one somewhat unrelated, but how many of these projects are you working on at one time, roughly?
I have right now in my studio 2 other monuments that I'm working on right now. And one is about a 9-foot figure that's crouched on a rock. And the other is a single football player all by himself. Yeah, I've got 2, and then smaller ones, probably 20 in my studio. 20 different ones. Yeah.
Did you make this like that? It like just specifically for art school? Because we were looking at the end.
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Great question. Do y'all know the Reese Family Foundation? Any of y'all heard the Reese Family Foundation? Lou and Gib Reese started collecting my work in Santa Fe about 20 years ago. And I didn't know who they were. They really didn't share where they were from. I just shipped work out to them. And this is an amazing thing. They loved my work. They purchased a lot over the years, but I didn't know who they were. But I always give my best. And it's about relationships. You know what I'm saying? I promised artwork, delivered, give them the best that I've got. Well, 20 years later, I send out a postcard of the small one. You know that little small monument, or the small football team? I send out a postcard with that to my clients. Send out about 2,000 of them. And my wife gets a phone call. And it's Lou Reese. And Lou says to Jeanette, do you think Scott would consider doing that sculpture as a monument for our high school? And we worked out pricing and logistics and everything. They had to get permission from the school superintendent to do it, and we came to an agreement, and we did it. And so I purposely sculpted an N on the 4 players for Newark High School. So this piece is a gift from people who care about their community to give back. Y'all feel that? This isn't, the school played a part in having it be here by giving permission, but it was the Reese Family Foundation that chose to give this as a gift to you guys. Isn't that awesome? Yeah. Yep.
The end on that dude with the football. The end.
Yes.
On that dude with the football.
Yes.
And then the one raising his fist are 2 different ends.
Yes, they are. Good eye. Why did I do that? I know that I did that. Why? They didn't have team jerseys. These are what? Homemade. You think a couple of guys might have different ideas? Yeah. Yeah, you know they did. And there's only 4 ends. Not all the guys have jerseys with ends in them because they have these leather vests stitched up. There's 4. And I purposely gave those 4 ends. And who gets an A in the class for figuring out why I gave those 4 the letter N and not other players?
It sort of evenly breaks them all up.
It evenly breaks it up, but what shape do you see?
Square.
Huh?
Rectangle.
What shape do you see? What's the most important shape in all of life?
A circle.
Can you see the circle with those 4 ends?
I got it. I get an A.
Do you see where the circle starts? And the circle actually completes underneath the sculpture, but it's there. So you don't have to show the whole circle to feel the circle. You follow? Okay. So those are great questions. So I purposely sculpted different ends because these are homemade, guys. This isn't factory. They didn't go down to the store and buy a jersey with the letter N on it. And so, any other questions? This is fun.
Did I really get an A?
What?
Did I really get an A?
Do you?
Yeah, I answered it.
Did you say?
I yelled circle.
Did you?
Yeah, I get an A.
For today. You get an A for
I
today.
said in the class.
An A in the class today.
That's me.
All right. Who else? Who else got a question? Anybody?
No. Go ahead.
What you got?
Why is there like not knots, but like why is there like extra stuff on the other dude's clothes?
Show me. What are you talking about?
Like right there on the dude on the bottom, sitting down.
Right
like,
here?
Yeah. Like those little knots.
These?
Yeah.
Okay. Who can tell me what these are? I know some of you girls can. What are these? What? What are these? No? Any of y'all ever heard of a tie quilt? My daughter was late to school about, I can't remember how many times when she was in high school. She's 28 now. But back when she was in high school, if you got tardy, you either got detention or you made like 3 tie quilts to give away to charity. And so I helped her make some tie quilts when she was in high school. She had to donate those to a charity with the school. These are called tie quilts. Y'all know, who knows what a tie quilt is? 1, 2, yeah. And so that's yarn coming through and they tie it. Keeps the padding, what do they call that in between? That keeps it in place. Any other questions? You can't stump me? Nobody wants to stump me?
I have a question. So they've used clay a bit, but not translating clay into metal. So this was cast.
Yeah.
I don't really necessarily know about that. How many individual molds did it take? Do you know? Like when it's
I
all
do.
said and done?
The guy who made the molds on this piece, his name's Nate Johansson. He's been making molds. I've been sculpting 28 years. He's been making molds for bronzes for about 35. That's what kind of professionalism, that team I've got behind me. And he said this is the most complicated, most difficult, and the largest mold he's ever made. He said there were 94 pieces that this was cast in. And then they welded all the bronze pieces together. Yeah. And so if you want to really see how this is done, you know that big buffalo that I showed you in the library? If you went to my website, if you just typed in Scott Rogers Sculpture, Scott Rogers Art, Scott Rogers Bronze, my website will come up. And on that website, down at the bottom right hand side, there's a video that shows how this is made. And it shows that bison, that big American running bison, 7 feet tall, 12 feet wide. it shows step by step how this is made. The casting process. It's called the lost wax process, and it's thousands of years old. Okay, we good?
One last question.
Yeah.
What's the largest piece you've ever sculpted?
This piece right here. This is the largest.
You hear that, Newark?
Yeah, we're special.
You guys have been great. Thank you. Awesome. And one last thing, if any of y'all, I'm available. I love talking to people about art. I have my students call me. You're welcome to call me. The art instructor, you're welcome to call. I love to share. Anything that I can assist you with, let me know. I'm available. Okay? You're welcome.
What would you say the piece was your favorite to sculpt? Like most time you had, most fun you had in sculpting it?
The one I'm working on. The one I'm working on. That's the most important one. So, all right, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
For the past 3 years, first home football game, we've dedicated a certain part of our facility down here. 2 years ago, we did our new football field. Last year, with the goodness of the board, we added a concession stand and renovated underneath. And once again this year, we are so thankful to have a supporting community. I'm sure you've noticed the monument at the east end of the bleachers, and that was donated by Mrs. Reese and Mr. Reese also. So please welcome Sarah Wallace and Mrs. Reese, artist Scott Rogers, and Dr. Wallace.
Thank you so much. It is terrific to be here. We've been working on this for about 3 years or so, and it's my pleasure to represent the Gilbert Reese Family Foundation and to recognize my mother, Lou Reese, right here. Just so that you know, when you travel around Newark, Ohio, you will see lots of art, public art, bronze public art, and it's because of Mom. She started buying this and recommending it and wanted all the public to really be able to enjoy public art in Newark. So we owe her a great deal of gratitude. Thank you. I also want to say that Scott Rogers, right next to Mom, is I would say, all over the country, all over the world known bronze sculptor. He's from the West, and Mom and Dad got to know him probably 30 years ago and have enjoyed his art for all of this time. He had a wonderful time with the kids at Newark High School today, and then getting to bring them down to see the art in person. So it's been a terrific day, and we just hope all of you will take a look at it, read about it, and just enjoy it over the generations to come. Thank you so much.
Okay, at this time, Mrs. Reese and her family will cut the ribbon dedicating the monument that will be there for many years for our community to enjoy. Once again, let's thank Mrs. Reese for a generous donation, and let's go Cats!